Hey everyone, it's Dr. Nightstare. Glad you're here. Before we get into it, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Quick question before we start. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Alright, let's get settled. Get comfortable, let your body relax, and just take it easy. The engine coughed a struggling sound, then it went quiet. I tried the ignition again, but nothing happened. A sudden chill filled the car as the last residual heat dissipated. Outside, thick snow fell in relentless sheets, covering the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. The world beyond the glass was a blurring white. I pulled out my phone, lifting it high, but no signal bars appeared on the screen. My chest tightened at the empty display. I was isolated. I took a deep breath, pushing down anxiety. The fuel gauge rested on empty. I had driven too far, pushed the limits of my tank through the worsening conditions. There was no going back now. The heater had stopped working the moment the engine died, and warmth left the enclosed space, replaced by a deep cold. My fingers were already stiff, losing their feeling, and a shiver ran through my body. I needed to move, to generate heat and find shelter. Staying in the car would mean freezing to death. I opened the glove compartment, searching for anything useful. A small flashlight rested there, beside a worn road map. Neither offered immediate solutions for my dead car in this blizzard. My gaze moved to the back seat. My emergency bag sat ready. I grabbed it. Inside were several extra layers of clothing, a full thermos of coffee, and some energy bars. I pulled on a thick wool sweater over my shirt, then layered a waterproof jacket on top, ensuring the hood was accessible. My winter boots felt solid on my feet, providing necessary traction against the growing snowdrifts. I pulled a knit cap low over my ears, covering every strand of hair, then wrapped a thick scarf around my face, leaving only my eyes exposed to the harsh air. The air inside the car grew colder with each passing minute, a testament to the storm's power. I had to face the storm. I secured the car door, pulling it shut with a click against the growing roar outside. The wind howled a brutal sound as I stepped out into the blinding white. The force of the blizzard immediately pushed against me, threatening to throw me off balance. Each step was a struggle, my legs sinking into the deep snow up to my knees. The biting cold stung my exposed skin, burning it, but I focused on movement, on the need to survive. I lowered my head against the relentless wind, forcing myself to continue, to put one foot in front of the other. I moved forward into the storm's heart, hoping to find some form of shelter or help, knowing I had no other choice. The world was blinding white. My body ached, cold, numbing fingers and toes. I pressed on, my goal to escape the blizzard. Through swirling snow, a light appeared. It was hope. I stumbled towards it, legs burning, lungs screaming. The light grew stronger, a shape in the distance. A cabin. Relief washed over me. I reached the door, weathered. I raised a numb fist to knock. The door opened slowly. An old woman with kind eyes, a smile, stood there. Her face had many wrinkles, hair a white bun. "Well, hello there, dear," she said, voice clear. "Come in before you freeze." She stepped back, gesturing inside. I stumbled over the threshold, pulled the door shut against the storm. Warmth enveloped me. A fire crackled in a hearth, casting shadows on the walls. The air smelled of wood smoke, something sweet. "I am Lillian," I said, voice hoarse. "My car broke down." "Beth," the woman replied, extending a hand. "And that is my husband, Gerald." A man sat in an armchair by the fire, a book in his lap. He looked up, gaze steady, then gave a nod. He did not speak. His eyes were dark, almost black. They held an expression I could not read. He was a large man with a beard. Beth led me to a chair near the fire. "You must be cold. Let me get you something to drink." She went into a kitchen area. The cabin was furnished with tables and chairs, quilts draped over a couch. No television, no radio, no computer was visible. Oil lamps provided light. The cabin held details of an older time. Beth returned with steaming mugs. "Here, drink this. It will warm you." The liquid in the mug was amber, thick, fragrant. It smelled of cinnamon and an earthy scent. I took a sip. The taste was unusual, sweet, with a strangeness that lingered. It was not coffee or regular tea. It warmed me quickly, heat spreading through my limbs, relaxing muscles. Gerald still sat by the fire, unmoving, gaze fixed on the flames. He had not spoken since my arrival. "It is quite a storm out there," Beth said, sitting opposite me, hands clasped. "We do not get many visitors this far out, especially not in this weather." Her smile remained, but her eyes held intensity. She watched me as I drank, head tilted. The warmth from the tea, with the cabin's heat, made my eyelids heavy. Lethargy began to move over me. The quiet of the cabin, broken only by the fire, grew in Gerald's stillness. Beth continued to speak, asking about my journey, but her words seemed to drift, blurring. My focus on her face became difficult. The tea had a powerful calming effect, almost too powerful. My thoughts felt sluggish, distant. Gerald finally shifted in his chair, turning his head to look at me. His dark eyes seemed to penetrate the warmth, and for a moment unease rose. The strong welcome contained something unspoken and heavy. Gerald's silence felt like observation. The comfort of the cabin, once absolute, now held apprehension. The strong tea had dulled my senses, and I slept deeply through the night, a heavy slumber. I woke feeling the warmth of the cabin and the lingering lethargy from the strange brew. Beth smiled, offering me breakfast, and I ate the simple food she put before me. The snow still fell outside, but not as fiercely as before. Beth suggested Gerald could look at my car. Perhaps he could get it running. I agreed, trying to appear grateful for their help. A knot of tension tightened within me, but I kept my face calm. We walked through the thinning snow to my car. Gerald examined the engine, peering under the hood with a flashlight. He tried a few things, muttering to himself, but the engine remained dead. He straightened up, his breath pluming in the cold air. "I need to check the battery cables in the trunk," he said, turning to me. "Sometimes they get loose in the cold." My heart gave a quick, hard beat in my chest. I knew what he would find. I kept my expression neutral, giving a small nod. Gerald walked to the back of the car and pulled the latch. The trunk lid lifted with a soft click and a mechanical groan. The interior light flickered on, illuminating the space within. 2 large bundles lay there, wrapped tightly in dark, heavy tarpaulins. The shapes were unmistakable, human forms bundled and tied. Gerald froze, his hand still on the trunk lid. He stared, his body rigid, then slowly turned his head to look at me. His dark eyes widened, disbelief and horror clear in their depths. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "They deserved it," I said, my voice quiet, calm. The cold air did not affect my words. My husband and my best friend. They betrayed me. I stepped closer, my hand moving to the small toolkit I kept by the back wheel well. My fingers closed around the cold, heavy metal of a tire iron. Gerald took a faltering step backward, his eyes fixed on my hand, then on the weapon. A desperate sound, a choked gasp, escaped his throat. I lifted the tire iron. He tried to turn, to run, but his movement was slow, hindered by the snow. I brought the heavy iron down hard, connecting with the back of his head. A sickening thud echoed in the still morning air. Gerald crumpled to the snowy ground without a sound, his body falling beside the open trunk. A dark stain began to spread across the white snow around his head. He did not move again. I stood over him, my breath steady, my grip firm on the iron. There was no emotion in me, only a cold certainty. The witness was gone. Gerald lay still, a heavy form on the snow, the dark stain around his head growing slowly. I wiped the tire iron clean on his coat, then placed it back in my toolkit, ensuring everything was exactly as I had found it. I closed the trunk, the latch clicking shut with a final sound. The engine was still under the hood, but I knew what to do. I made a quick, final adjustment to the battery cables, connecting them with precise, firm hands. I walked to the driver's side door, opened it, and settled into the seat. I turned the key. The engine coughed once, then roared to life, a steady sound filling the interior. The heater began to blow warm air, a stark contrast to the scene I had just left. I put the car in gear. I drove away from the cabin, leaving the bloody scene and the silent man behind. The snow still fell in thick, relentless sheets, a perfect blinding curtain. It covered the tracks quickly, erasing my presence from the isolated place, the pristine white swallowing all evidence. My journey continued into the vast white world, unburdened. There was only the road ahead, a quiet determination guiding me forward through the storm, towards my next destination. I found the meat on the kitchen counter. It was a dark, irregular chunk, unlike anything I had ever seen in our home or any butcher shop. Its texture seemed off, not quite muscle, not quite fat, and its color held a depth that felt wrong under the bright kitchen lights. Gage was not there. His keys hung on their hook, his wallet sat on the dresser, and his car remained parked in the driveway. The house was too quiet without his usual morning presence, and the peculiar meat felt like a warning placed specifically for me to find. My initial worry turned into a deep, chilling fear as hours passed without any word from him. I called the police, describing Gage's sudden disappearance and the strange substance I discovered. The officer who responded listened to my frantic explanation, then gave me a dismissive look. He suggested men sometimes needed space, and he mentioned how often spouses simply left without a trace. He said he would file a report, but his tone indicated little urgency or belief in my story, and he barely glanced at the chunk of meat I offered as evidence. His indifference solidified my growing dread, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest that I could not shake. The police provided no answers, leaving me alone with my growing apprehension. I went through Gage's things, searching for any clue, and found his recent bank statements. They detailed a series of increasingly large cash withdrawals, followed by purchases at hardware stores I knew he never frequented, and then several payments made to a motel on the outskirts of town, a place notorious for its abandonment and disrepair. The transactions made no sense, and a desperate intuition compelled me to act. The cold official response had failed me, and I needed someone who would genuinely listen. I hired a private investigator the next day, a quiet man named Miller with tired eyes but a focused demeanor. I explained everything, leaving nothing out, and handed him the bank statements along with a photo of Gage. Miller worked quickly, tracing the addresses, talking to people near the hardware stores and the motel. 2 days later, he called me with his findings. Gage had been seen making strange purchases, unusual items for anyone, let alone my husband. He visited the run-down motel repeatedly, spending long hours inside. Miller confirmed the payments were ongoing, securing a specific room number. The private investigator's words confirmed my worst fears and intensified my desperation. The knowledge that Gage was in that decaying motel, involved in something so bizarre, became an unbearable burden. My blood felt cold in my veins, and my hands trembled constantly. I drove towards the abandoned motel, Miller's instructions etched into my mind, the image of that dark, unsettling meat burning behind my eyes. I needed to know what had happened to my husband, and I needed to know it now, before my growing fear consumed me completely. The motel stood desolate, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the overgrown lot. A rusted sign creaked above the entrance, its letters faded and peeling. I gripped the cold, heavy key Miller had given me, my knuckles white with tension. Each step I took towards the designated room felt like an act of pure defiance against the creeping terror in my chest. The door stood slightly ajar, a dark invitation, and a sickening smell wafted out into the oppressive air. It was a smell of something rotten, something dead, but also something else, something metallic and sweet that turned my stomach. I pushed the door open, the old wood groaning a protest that seemed to echo my own internal scream. The room was a black pit, the single window offering little light through the grime-covered pane. My eyes struggled to adjust, but the smell assaulted me instantly, a thick, cloying stench of decay that made my gorge rise. It was worse inside, a miasma of putrefaction that permeated every fiber of the air. The floor was dark with old stains, the bed a twisted mess of sheets and blankets, but my gaze fixed on the center of the room. There, scattered across the threadbare carpet and splashed onto the walls, were fragments. Chunks of something, dark and irregular, slick with glistening moisture. My mind struggled to process the shapes, the textures, the absolute wrongness of it all. It was meat, raw and dismembered, but not from an animal. A terrible, undeniable certainty began to form in my mind, a truth too vile to contemplate. These were human remains. A limb, partially severed, lay near an overturned chair. Dark, viscous pools had dried to a sticky sheen on the floorboards, reflecting the limited light with a dull gleam. Bone fragments, stark white against the crimson smears, littered the space alongside unrecognizable organs. The walls themselves were not spared, smeared with the same dark, drying ichor. This was not merely death. This was an unspeakable violation, a desecration on a scale that shattered my understanding of reality. A wet, guttural sound, like something struggling to breathe, pulled my attention towards the bathroom. The door was half open, casting a narrow sliver of light onto the hallway floor. The putrid smell intensified from within that small space. I stumbled towards it, my legs heavy, my breath catching in my throat. I pushed the door fully open, revealing a scene that burned itself into my memory with an agonizing clarity. Gage was there, slumped against the back of the bathtub, his head lolling unnaturally. He was barely recognizable. His skin was a mottled gray and green, peeling away in patches to reveal raw, glistening muscle underneath. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, seemed to sink into his skull, their expression a mixture of agony and of vacant horror. His body was bloated, distended to an impossible size, his stomach stretched taut and discolored. The skin there looked thin, almost translucent, pulled tight over something pressing from within. As I watched, frozen in a horror that transcended any fear I had ever known, a sickening tremor ran through his entire frame. The distended flesh of his belly began to ripple violently, contracting and expanding with an unnatural rhythm. A wet, tearing sound ripped through the quiet room, a sound of flesh yielding to an irresistible force. A dark, pulsating mass began to emerge from a gaping, ragged wound that had ripped open in his abdomen. It was not a normal birth. It was a grotesque eruption, pushing its way out of his disintegrating body. A head emerged first, slick with blood and a viscous, clear fluid. It was disproportionately large, its skin a pale, sickly white, almost translucent, revealing pulsating veins beneath. Two enormous black eyes, entirely pupil, stared blankly into the room. Its mouth was a wide, toothless slit, constantly opening and closing with a silent, sucking motion. Small, spindly limbs followed, twitching and spasming as they freed themselves from Gage's ruined body. This was not an infant. It was a monstrosity, an alien entity that pulsed with its own hideous life. Gage let out a final rattling gasp. a sound of absolute despair and crushing defeat as the last of the grotesque creature pulled free, leaving his body a rapidly collapsing husk. The parasitic entity, still connected to him by a thick, rope-like umbilical cord, writhed on the tile floor, its black eyes fixing on me with an intelligent, horrifying hunger. Gage's eyes, though sunken and filled with agony, focused on me. His voice was a wet, gurgling whisper, barely audible over the squirming of the creature beside him. He struggled to form words, his lips a gray, cracked mess. "Please," he croaked, "it's spreading. Kill me. Stop it." His hand, skeletal and trembling, twitched towards me, a desperate final plea. The raw urgency of his words broke through my shock, revealing the last part of Gage I recognized. I knelt beside him, my hand instinctively reaching for his cooling face. His skin was clammy, already losing its human warmth. His gaze locked with mine, pleading for an end. There was a clarity in his eyes, a flicker of the man I loved, begging for release from this monstrous possession. I leaned in close, pressing my forehead against his. The metallic scent of his decay filled my senses. I felt the last physical connection to him, a final, disturbing goodbye to the man I had known. I pulled back, tears burning my eyes but my resolve hardening. I saw a shard of ceramic from the broken sink, sharp and jagged, lying on the floor. My trembling fingers closed around it, the rough edge biting into my palm. I brought it down swiftly, aiming for the hollow of his throat, ending his suffering. His body spasmed once, a final convulsive tremor, and then went still. The creature beside him gave a high-pitched, sucking shriek, its head whipping towards me. I ignored it, my gaze fixed on Gage, now truly gone. I stood up, my legs barely supporting me. The stench, the sight of the creature, Gage's dead body, all pressed in on me. I stumbled out of the bathroom, away from the abomination still writhing on the tile. I pushed past the carnage in the motel room, not looking back at the scattered remains. The door groaned as I pulled it shut behind me, sealing the horror within. I ran, not caring where I went, the cold night air a shock against my skin. My body ached, my throat raw from choked screams. I drove away, the motel disappearing in my rearview mirror, a memory that would forever haunt me. The weight of what I had done, what I had seen, settled deep in my bones. Days turned into a blur of numb existence. I ate little, slept less, living in a constant state of shock and disbelief. My body felt different. A strange unease had begun within me, a subtle yet persistent change. I tried to dismiss it, blaming stress and trauma. The nausea began, a wave that hit me each morning. My abdomen felt tender, a faint pressure growing beneath my skin. I remembered Gage's bloated stomach, the impossible distension. A cold dread settled within my heart, colder than any fear I had known before. I bought a test, my hands shaking as I performed the simple task. The results stared back at me, stark and undeniable. Positive. It was inside me. The entity, Gage's horror, now lived within me. I pressed my hands to my stomach, a desperate revulsion swelling within me. This was not life. This was a continuation of the horror that destroyed Gage. I would not let it happen again. I would not carry this thing. I would end it, before it could ever take root and grow, before it could become another monster. I would kill it. The vow was a desperate whisper in the empty house, a promise of violent defiance against the horror that had found me. We watched the Mars Initiative unfold from our control centers. The United States and the new Soviet Republic had hurled their best vessels and mines towards the Red Planet, each nation eager to plant its flag first and claim dominion over vast new territories. Our early colonization efforts focused on establishing self-sustaining outposts, projecting national power, and securing orbital routes. Each new hectare of surveyed land, or every additional ton of processed regolith, represented a victory in this new silent war for interstellar supremacy. Then the first reports came from the NSR's deep subsurface drills. They unearthed something impossible beneath the arid plains. Initially, our analysts dismissed the fragmented data, but subsequent confirmations arrived from independent U.S. probes. The NSR teams had discovered bodies, unequivocally non-human in origin, embedded within layers of Martian rock. Their forms were skeletal yet perfectly preserved, their interiors not bone or tissue, but a solid crystalline substance resembling polished stone. This discovery changed everything. The race for colonization died overnight, replaced by an urgent, terrifying pursuit. Both global powers immediately reprioritized all Martian assets. Our engineers halted plans for agricultural domes and redirected their focus to excavation. Geologists became archaeologists, tasked with penetrating the Martian crust, seeking any further evidence of the impossible civilization that left these stony remains. The competition intensified, no longer about staking claims for our future, but about unearthing an ancient, chilling past. Our dig teams operated with a precision born of necessity, their remote sensors and automated drills systematically mapping and extracting samples from designated sectors of the Martian crust. ABT 1957-3, an American deep-core drilling team, was assigned to Sector Gamma 7, a vast geological anomaly identified during initial orbital scans. We monitored their progress daily, a steady stream of telemetry flowing back to Earth, confirming drill depth, atmospheric readings, and geological composition. It was a routine operation, one of hundreds spread across the red planet, each vying to unearth another fragment of the impossible ancient civilization. Then, the data feed from ABT 19573 wavered, the telemetry flickering on our screens. A voice confirmed as Dr. Eris Thorne, lead xenogeologist aboard the OSDS Pathfinder, and designated ABR 1939-8, broke protocol. His voice, usually calm and analytical, was tight, strained by urgency as it pushed through the immense distance. It was not a formal report, but a fractured, garbled exclamation, barely coherent against the heavy static. Found it. We found it. Oh God, we found it. The transmission then cut off abruptly, the line going dead. We stared at the blank screen, the silence from Sector Gamma 7 ringing louder than any alarm. Our communications specialists immediately initiated a full-spectrum hailing sequence, sending automated pings and voice queries across every available channel. Each attempt returned nothing but atmospheric noise and the faint echo of our own signals. The silence persisted, a complete and unyielding void where the active feed from ABTT 1950-73 had been. Their sudden, unexplained disappearance left us with only 3 words, heavy with implication and intense curiosity. Command wasted no time. Within hours, a rapid response search and recovery mission was authorized and launched, fueled by the unsettling suspicion that those 3 words heralded a discovery far greater than we could have ever imagined. Our vessel's magnetic clamps engaged the OSDS Pathfinder's derelict airlock, securing our connection. We cycled the hatches, pressure equalizing with a hiss, then pushed into the main corridor. The air inside felt stale and cold, a metallic tang pricking our nostrils. My suit's internal light cut through the gloom, revealing the deserted passageway. No emergency lights flickered or klaxons sounded, only stillness. We moved with caution, heavy boots echoing on metal deck plates as we swept engineering bays and crew quarters. Personal effects of the ABT 1957-3 crew remained untouched. Photographs, half-read books, evidence of interrupted lives. We found no signs of struggle, no damage to vital systems, only pervasive absence. The command center remained empty, its main view screen dark. Our search led us to the ship's central xenogeology laboratory, Dr. Eris Thorne's station. He lay slumped over his console, head resting against the cold metal. His pressure suit was intact, but inspection revealed a horrifying transformation beneath the transparent visor. His skin was no longer flesh, but an iridescent crystalline crust, perfectly smooth, shimmering with internal light. Patches of this strange material bloomed across his exposed neck and hands, replacing organic tissue. His eyes, though wide open, possessed a hard, unseeing quality, reflecting the lab's sterile light. Every flat surface throughout the ship bore densely scribbled symbols. These strange markings, an alien script, covered consoles, bulkheads, and transparent screens of dormant data pads etched with manic force. They glowed under our lights, etched into the metal with significant force, without penetrating the hull. This incomprehensible script suggested a relentless, obsessive effort. The crew dedicated their final moments to recording a terrifying message across the ship's interior. We moved to the primary AI core, operational lights glowing green. Our data specialist interfaced with the system, downloading mission logs. The console flared to life, displaying terabytes of information. Our scans confirmed the files held impossible, non-Unicode symbols, a vast collection we could not parse. These symbols matched the etched markings on the ship's surfaces, confirming their origin. Analysis revealed complex structures within these data streams. Our decryption specialists confirmed complex patterns formed precise, multi-dimensional coordinates. They pointed not to any known Martian location or charted star system, but towards a destination unknown, deep within the void between galaxies. The sheer scale and impossibility of these coordinates escalated the mystery far beyond terrestrial understanding. We had barely finished downloading the impossible coordinates, their complex structures still filling our data logs, when the connection severed without a whisper. Our comms went dead, the sound of distant Earth communications vanishing into absolute silence. We tried to hail them, sending out desperate pings across all frequencies, but only the void answered our calls. Suddenly, a violent tremor ripped through the OSDS pathfinders, shaking our very bones. It was not an internal failure. An immense external force crushed the vessel. Alarms blared, a jarring cacophony as the ship's integrity indicators plummeted. Through the main viewport, a blinding emerald light erupted, engulfing our entire vessel. The reinforced hull groaned, metal bending under unimaginable strain. We felt the decks buckle beneath our feet as the OSDS Pathfinder HASS began to disintegrate, consumed by the searing energy. Heat rapidly built within the vessel, melting the internal systems into slag. We barely had time to register the impossible before the ship itself became an inferno, its structure collapsing inward, crushing everything within. The last thing we felt was an immense downward pressure, dragging us, along with the burning wreckage, deep into the Martian crust, a brutal, deliberate descent into the planet's molten interior. We were consumed by the planet, incinerated and buried without a trace. Back on Earth, we watched the telemetry flatline. The red beacon marking the OSDS Pathfinder and our search team vanished from our orbital maps, replaced by an empty void. The operation was scrubbed from all active logs within moments. NASA issued an immediate, blanket denial of the entire mission, declaring the region a radioactive hazard from an unforeseen geothermal event. Official statements fabricated a cover story, a controlled containment protocol for a supposed critical reactor failure in an experimental drilling rig, All personnel associated with the mission, from the highest-ranking directors to the lowest-level technicians, received new directives, their records expunged, their lives restructured within hours. The truth of what was found and what happened to the search team was eradicated from existence. We thought we had buried every secret deep beneath the Martian crust, scrubbing the records clean, incinerating all evidence. The official narrative, a seamless fabrication of reactor failure and geothermal hazard, had effectively silenced all inquiries. Months passed in an uneasy calm, our meticulously executed cover-up holding firm. Then an encrypted data burst arrived, bypassing all our secure channels, originating from a new Soviet Republic deep mining rig in Sector 43, Alpha. It was a single, high-resolution image, carefully authenticated, showing a circuit board, its green substrate etched with a familiar serial number, immediately identified it as the primary AI processing unit from the OSDS Pathfinder. That board had served as the very core of the mission we had eradicated. The board was completely intact, undamaged, resting on a field technician's workbench. This artifact, a remnant of a mission supposedly incinerated and drilled into the Martian core, now existed thousands of kilometers away, within the heart of our rival's operation. Its inexplicable presence was a silent, irrefutable artifact. It starkly confirmed our official denial was a monstrous lie. The motherboard proved the elaborate cover-up and, chillingly, confirmed the horrific reality of what the team aboard the Pathfinders had truly found, something powerful enough to defy our absolute control. The house contained every aspect of my father's existence, each item placed without reason or order. Piles of things covered every surface. Dusty stacks of newspapers formed precarious towers in the hallway, and the floorboards groaned under the weight of accumulated boxes. Our small rooms felt perpetually full, leaving little space for free movement. My father moved through this maze with a careful tread. He spoke few words, his presence a constant watchful weight, and his eyes never met mine for long periods. We rarely ate meals together at the chipped kitchen table. A heavy padlock secured the refrigerator door, a shiny brass statement of scarcity. I learned early not to approach the fridge without specific permission, and permission came only for the smallest portions of food, given with a silent gesture. Another absolute rule dictated no unexpected visitors ever crossed our threshold. The sound of someone knocking on the front door instantly brought a hushed panic, a desperate scramble to pretend we did not exist inside. We would hold our breath until the footsteps faded away. Most significant were the black garbage bags. They stood in corners of every room, leaning against walls, filling vacant spaces under windows and beside door frames. Some bags were small, barely containing anything. Others bulged with unseen contents tied with coarse string. My father never allowed me to touch them. He never spoke about what they contained, and I never asked. My imagination filled the dark plastic with unimaginable things, broken bones, moldy food, perhaps even parts of people. Everything inside them terrified me. Touching them was absolutely forbidden. I accepted their presence as an immutable aspect of our house, a fundamental truth that required no explanation. I simply obeyed. The call came in the night. My father died. I returned to the house, an older version of myself, but the house remained unchanged. Its silent rooms held the same accumulated clutter, the same looming stacks, the same dull light filtering through grime-coated windows. The air itself seemed heavy with the years, a weight of continued stasis. No one watched me now. The padlock still secured the refrigerator, its brass cold under my touch, but no one forbade me to open it. I did not, the habit too deeply ingrained. My eyes found the black bags first. They stood where they always had, silent and still in their familiar places. A tremor went through me, an old echo of dread, but it quickly faded. This was my house now. There was no one to stop me. I walked to the largest bag leaning in the hallway, its plastic surface dull and dusty. My fingers, surprisingly steady, untied the coarse string at its neck. I pulled open the top. Inside lay crumpled newspapers, empty tin cans, and broken plastic containers. No horror, no secrets, only the ordinary refuse of daily life, long abandoned. I moved from bag to bag, a methodical pilgrimage through the house. Each one yielded a similar collection: yellowed magazines, tattered clothes, empty food wrappers, discarded packaging materials. One bag held only old, broken toys I vaguely remembered from my early childhood. Another contained a collection of dead batteries and tangled electrical wires. The mystery that had fueled years of fearful speculation dissolved with each open bag. There was no dark secret hidden within the plastic. The bags contained only rubbish, accumulated waste without malice or deeper meaning. The true enigma was not what lay inside them, but the rules themselves, the unspoken fear they instilled, and why my father had kept everything. The small brass lock on my kitchen cabinet was barely visible. I kept it shut most days, a small brass disc securing a space I rarely used. One evening, a friend visited my apartment. She looked at the cabinet. "Why the lock?" she asked, her voice simply curious. I turned towards the cabinet, really seeing the small padlock for the first time in many years. Its brass surface caught the kitchen light. It mirrored the exact padlock that had secured my father's refrigerator. I had bought this lock years ago without thinking, affixing it to this particular cabinet. I had not consciously registered its presence since then. A sudden heat rose into my cheeks. I walked to the cabinet. My hands moved to the small key. I inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The mechanism clicked open with a soft sound. I unfastened the lock and pulled the cabinet door wide. Inside lay a collection of old receipts, a few dried-up pens, and some loose buttons. There was nothing valuable within. No important items were kept there. Only ordinary objects, accumulated without particular reason, stored behind a silent barrier. I pulled every item out of the cabinet and dropped it into the kitchen trash. The cabinet was now completely empty, a clean, open space. I stood there for a long moment, the small brass lock still in my palm. It was a tangible object from my past, a silent witness to ingrained rules. I did not discard it. I walked to my desk and placed the lock into a small drawer. Its solid weight felt real against my fingers. I understood that fully breaking free from old habits required time. The fear of scarcity, the constant need for rigid control, the unspoken rules that had governed my childhood home, they did not vanish quickly. They slowly receded, but they left indelible marks behind. I had opened the black bags. I had emptied the cabinet. The lock remained, a quiet reminder. I woke early and went to our room. Sunlight entered through the window. My love lay still in the bed. I leaned over him and brushed my lips against his forehead. His skin felt cool. "Good morning, my dear," I whispered. He did not respond. I did not expect him to answer. This was our morning ritual. I pulled back the blankets, careful not to disturb his position, and began to clean him. He needed fresh clothes every day. I spoke to him about the weather outside and the birds singing in the garden. He always listened. I combed his dark hair and arranged it just so. His eyes remained closed. I knew he was comfortable. I placed a kiss on his cheek again before dressing him in a clean shirt. Outside, a shrill voice cut through the air. Mrs. Henderson again. "Anna, are you home?" she shouted. I ignored her. She always made such a racket. The front door rattled. She pounded on the wood. "There is a terrible smell coming from your house," she screamed. "The whole street is talking." I heard other voices joining in, low murmurs becoming louder. They spoke of strange noises late at night. I simply closed our window to block them out. My love deserved peace. He just needed to rest. Their complaints meant nothing. I picked up his hand and held it. His fingers were stiff, but I loved their feel. The world outside could wait. I had my love. The shouting outside grew into a continuous clamor. I heard them discussing the smell again, their voices filled with anger. I pulled the curtain across our window, wanting to keep their negativity from our space. A sharp rap sounded at the front door. I knew this knock was not Mrs. Henderson's frantic pounding. This knock held a different weight, a firm authority. A man's voice spoke, clear and stern, demanding I open the door. I did not move from my love's side. He needed me here. Another voice joined the first, deeper. They stated they were police officers. They said they had received multiple complaints. They spoke of a welfare check. I tightened my grip on my love's hand. His skin felt cool beneath my palm. "They are trying to disturb us, my dear," I whispered to him, my voice low. "They do not understand our peace." The knocking continued, growing more insistent, resonating through the entire house. Then the man's voice again, louder this time. He said they would be forced to enter if I did not comply. I knew what that meant. They meant to come inside. They meant to take my love from me. I leaned over him, pressing my ear against his chest, listening for the faint rise and fall I always imagined. "Please, my dear," I urged him. "You must wake up, just for a moment. Show them you are here with me." I stroked his cheek, hoping to coax him awake. His eyes remained closed, his face still. A splintering sound ripped through the quiet of our home. The front door shuddered against its frame. I heard wood crack. They were forcing their way in. I would not let them reach him. I positioned myself in front of the bed, my back to my love, ready to shield him. Another loud snap, then the sudden crash of the door as it gave way. The harsh light of the morning streamed into the hallway. Footsteps thudded on the wooden floor. I heard several men speaking as they entered my home. The men in uniforms entered our room. Their eyes immediately went to the bed, to my love. I stood firm, blocking them as best I could. The taller officer stepped forward, his face contorting. He stopped short, one hand going to his nose, his eyes wide. He looked at me, then back at my love. I saw understanding dawn in his gaze, a terrible realization. Another officer came up beside him, his expression quickly mirroring the first. They saw my love was gone. They saw what I refused to see. "Ma'am, step away from the bed," the first officer commanded, his voice strained. I did not move. He reached for my arm. I recoiled, shielding my love. "He is only sleeping," I told them, my voice firm. "You must not disturb him." The second officer pulled out a device. He spoke into it, his words clipped. "We have a deceased male. Appears to have been here for some time. Suspect is uncooperative." His eyes swept over the room, then landed on me. He took out restraints. They moved towards me with purpose. I knew they meant to take him. I knew they meant to separate us forever. My heart pounded against my ribs. "No," I cried, my voice rising. "You cannot touch him. He is mine." I turned back to my love, pressing my hands onto his chest, begging him. "My love, please, wake up for me now. Show them." I whispered words of desperate longing. Then a sound came from the bed. A low, guttural exhalation escaped his lips. The officers froze. Their eyes widened, fixed on my love. His eyelids fluttered, slow and heavy, then opened a fraction. A dull, milky glaze showed in his eyes. His head turned on the pillow, a dry rasping sound accompanying the movement. A slow, agonizing twitch went through his left arm. It lifted, stiff and unnatural, bending at the elbow with a creak. His fingers, rigid before, curled slowly, a macabre invitation. A collective gasp left the officers. They stumbled back, their faces ashen. One dropped his device. The air filled with their terror. My love's lips parted, revealing yellowed teeth, and a wet, sickening gurgle came from his throat. He pushed himself upwards, cadaverous, his movements jerky and disjointed. His vacant gaze found mine. A cold triumph filled me. He heard me. He answered me. He was here for me. My twisted desire was granted. I read the sleepy time routine to my son, Alex, every night. It was his favorite book, a comforting ritual before bed. Tonight, as I turned to the page where the boy brushes his teeth, the boy on the page no longer looked happy, his eyes now darting to the side. I blinked, dismissing it as fatigue, but then they shifted again, fixing on the illustrated shower curtain in the background. A dark shape now seemed to ripple behind the plastic, a shadow where no shadow should have been. I stared, my heart quickening as the innocent drawing held an undeniable menace. I turned the page, and the next illustration showed the boy in his pajamas, standing alone in a dark hallway. From the shadows, a figure with an impossibly long neck peered out from behind a doorframe, watching him with an unwavering gaze. On the subsequent spread, the boy lay in his bed with the covers pulled tightly to his chin, but his wide eyes remained fixed on an open closet door across the room. The gentle smile he once held had stretched into a grotesque grimace of pure terror. The final page depicted the boy's face up close, streaked with fresh tears, his eyes red and puffy from weeping. Beneath his distressed image, the phrase, "Sleep tight," stood in bold, cheerful letters. Alex snored beside me, oblivious, already drifting into his own slumber. The terror of the shifting images felt too real. I snatched the book from Alex's sleeping hands. I tore the spine with a vicious twist, splitting the book in two. Each page I shredded into smaller pieces, my hands shaking as I ripped. I tossed the crumpled fragments deep into the kitchen trash. The horror was gone. The threat eliminated. Alex and I were safe. I walked to my bedroom, climbed into bed, anticipating a peaceful sleep. I slept for what felt like mere moments. Then a sharp squeal ripped through the bedroom. My eyes snapped open, and I saw the bedroom door slightly ajar. A darker shape began to unfold from beneath my bed. A woman's head, pale and still, slowly rose from the shadows directly onto my mattress. Her neck stretched upward, impossibly long, reaching past the edge of the bed. Long, bony fingers extended next, wrapping around the carved wood of the bedpost closest to my face. Her grip tightened on the wood. The pale woman's eyes were fixed on my face. She did not blink. She remained there, staring at me, without moving, without a sound, as the dark night slowly gave way to the first slivers of morning light. The first rays of sunlight touched my room, and the pale woman's head slowly withdrew from beneath my bed. Her impossibly long neck pulled back, and her bony fingers released the bedpost. She slipped through the slightly open closet door. I moved from that house, and then from the next one, and the next, but it made no difference. Every night, the pale woman's head emerged from beneath my bed, her impossibly long neck stretching upwards, her eyes fixed on my face until the first slivers of morning light arrived. My life became a perpetual state of terror and observation, and I knew she would always be there, just waiting for the dark. I locked the front door, the solid click confirming it was sealed. My fingers traced the cold metal of the deadbolt before moving to each window, ensuring every latch held fast. No light escaped past the drawn curtains. The street outside existed only as a distant, indistinct sound. I moved through the familiar rooms, my steps deliberate on the worn floorboards. In the kitchen, I lifted the loose tile and retrieved the knife. The steel felt weighty in my palm, a tool for a singular, brutal purpose. I gripped the handle, my thumb tracing the sharp edge. This night would bring the final payment for a long-held debt. Every fiber of my being was set, ready for his inevitable arrival. I waited. The air in the room grew heavy. He stood in the kitchen doorway, a figure tall and lean, his smile a flat line. I had not heard him enter. "You are punctual," I said, my voice steady. He chuckled, a rasping sound. "Always. And you always hopeful for a different outcome." He moved closer, his gait unhurried, his gaze sweeping the secured room. "This setup, it is charming in its repetition, is it not? All the latches fastened, the curtains drawn." He stopped before me, his eyes locking onto mine. "Still holding on to those memories, are we? The ones you recovered from where you hid them deep inside." He sighed, a clear performance of boredom. Such effort wasted. "We both know how this ends, just like all the other times." His smile stretched, showing too many teeth. "Have you prepared my eulogy this visit? Something mournful, I hope. You always were better at those." The words, implying endless cycles of torment and forgotten pasts, twisted a knot in my gut. My grip tightened on the knife. He knew. He always knew. My vision narrowed, and the rage broke free from its binding. I moved, a sudden burst of speed carrying me across the floor, and I brought the blade down. It struck true, sinking deep into his chest with a wet tearing sound, and I pushed it farther, twisting the handle. His body did not recoil, and his eyes did not widen with pain. The grin on his face remained fixed, a calm, awful expression which held no surprise. I pulled the knife free, a gush of dark liquid following its exit, and he still stood there, his gaze unwavering on my own. No wound opened on his shirt, and no blood stained the fabric. He simply stood, whole and unharmed, with the same knowing amusement in his features. I stared at him, the knife hanging useless in my hand, my breath caught in my throat. My mind struggled to comprehend what I saw, and the expectation of his death crumbled into a stark, impossible truth. He reached out, taking the knife from my unresisting fingers. His touch was cold, seeping into my bones. He tossed the weapon onto the wooden floor where it clattered, a sharp sound in the room. "You forget," he said, his voice soft now, holding no mockery. "Some debts are not settled with steel. Some debts require something more ephemeral." He stepped closer, invading my space, and I could not move away. His dark eyes pierced through me. "What will you offer me now for your freedom?" My thoughts spun, desperate with no defense left. "I have nothing," I whispered, the words ragged. He shook his head, a slow, deliberate movement. "You always have something. Tonight's encounter, for instance. A fresh, vivid memory of your rage and futile attempt is a gift I would cherish." He offered a hand in invitation. "Give me this night. Give me the memory of what happened here." The choice was not a choice. I nodded, a jerky movement of my head. "Take it," I said, my voice barely audible. "Take this night." His smile returned, a satisfied curve of his lips. He did not touch me, but I felt a sudden, deep emptiness in my head, a void where the vivid details of my revenge, my fury, and his imperviousness had just been. It was gone, erased. I knew something had happened, but the specifics dissolved. He turned to leave, walking towards the doorway through which he had appeared. Then he paused, his back still towards me. "Tell me," he said, his voice light, almost conversational. "Did you at least enjoy this second visit more than the first?" The word struck me, a blow to my fading mind. Second visit? The question echoed in the sudden emptiness of my mind, a chilling suggestion of a forgotten, endless cycle. I stood there, utterly lost, watching him disappear into the shadows, the front door open to the indifferent night. The van smelled of stale beer and cheap cologne, a new kind of freedom I was trying to wear. Tim, my boyfriend, yelled something over the blast of his band's demo, his hand finding my leg. I squeezed his knee and smiled, a practiced movement I hoped looked natural. This was the new me, the one who didn't flinch at the chaos, the one who belonged in this rolling metal box speeding toward a remote field and a concert under the stars. Cans clinked and bottles rattled. Brian, behind the wheel, took another pull from a brown bottle, his eyes fixed on the darkening two-lane road ahead. His head bobbed with the bass line, a loose rhythmic motion that felt just a little too disconnected from the actual steering. A cloud of sweet, pungent smoke filled the space from the back seats where Maya and Jake passed a joint. Their laughter was loud and easy, mingling with the distorted guitar riffs. Everyone moved to the music, a collective pulse of young energy. They were all so completely in it, lost to the moment, vibrating with a desperate kind of joy that I watched with a quiet part of myself. Brian let out a whoop when the van hit a bump, sending a spray of cheap beer across the dashboard. He laughed, a raw, joyous sound, and gave the wheel a playful twitch. The van swayed, recovering its line a moment later, and no one else seemed to notice. My stomach tightened. I glanced at Brian's profile, his jaw set, his gaze still on the disappearing road, but his grip on the wheel seemed too relaxed. The speedometer needle hovered above 90. The light from the setting sun slanted through the grimy windows, painting streaks of orange across the dust-streaked interior. Every mile deepened the sense of leaving everything else behind, pushing further into this wild, unrestrained night. I leaned my head against the vibrating glass, feeling the engine's power beneath me, a relentless force carrying us all forward. The road curved and Brian's foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The van picked up speed, the tires whined against the asphalt. He sang along, off-key, oblivious to the increasing sway, a single hand now steering, the other waving rhythmically. He gripped the bottle again, tipping it back, then slammed it down onto the console. The van swerved slightly, a subtle shift that sent a cold prickle up my spine. The others cheered louder, mistaking the carelessness for excitement, fully immersed in their own defiant roar. I watched the roadside trees blur, a dark, unbroken wall rushing past. The trees became a blur as the world pitched sideways with a violent lurch. Brian yelled a curse. The van peeled from the asphalt, its tires screaming their protest as we left the road. It tilted, then tumbled down the steep embankment. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. My body slammed against the seatbelt, then against hard surfaces, a series of relentless impacts. Air filled with the acrid smell of burning rubber and gasoline. I heard a choked gasp, a sickening crunch, then Tim's guttural cry. The van spun, then rolled, a deafening crash as it came to rest. A sharp pain pulsed through my head. The roar of impact stopped. The absence of sound was absolute. A dull ache was the only feeling. My ears rang with a high-pitched whine. I blinked, trying to clear the haze from my vision. The world came into focus. I was upside down, trapped by the seatbelt, my head throbbing. I pushed against the crushed roof, feeling a sharp pain in my ribs. Blood trickled down my temple. The van lay a mangled wreck, metal twisted and glass shattered everywhere. Tim was slumped forward in his seat, his head at an unnatural angle. His chest was still. Maya was twisted between the front seats, her eyes open, staring at nothing. Jake lay half out of the back door, a heavy silence around him. A groan broke the awful quiet. Brian. He was stirring, struggling to push himself up from the driver's side. His face was streaked with dirt and blood. His eyes met mine, wide and panicked. "Help me," I croaked, my voice raw. He scrambled over the wreckage, his movements stiff. He unbuckled his own seatbelt and pulled himself free. He reached for me, his hand grasping my shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough. He fumbled with my seatbelt buckle. It clicked open. I fell onto the floor, a fresh wave of pain washing over me. He knelt beside me, his breath ragged. He looked around the interior, his gaze lingering on the still bodies. A strange change came over his expression. His eyes hardened. He grabbed my arm, pulling me roughly toward the driver's seat. "You were driving," he stated, his voice flat. "No, I wasn't." I tried to struggle. He slammed my head against the dashboard. The world spun. He hit me again, a hard blow to my stomach. I gasped, unable to breathe. He dragged my limp body into the driver's seat, forcing my hands onto the steering wheel. He wiped blood from his own face onto my shirt. He pulled a broken bottle from the floor and placed it in my hand, then let it drop. He pushed my fingers around the wheel, leaving his own prints over mine. "This is on you," he snarled. He stood up, looking over the wrecked van one last time. He glanced at me, lying half-conscious against the steering wheel. He turned and stumbled toward the dark tree line. He disappeared into the trees without a backward glance. I watched him go, my body aching, my mind struggling to comprehend. The darkness swallowed him whole. The throbbing behind my eyes pushed at the edges of my vision. Brian's form receded into the dark wall of trees, dissolving into the night. I tried to move my fingers around the steering wheel, but they had no feeling. The metal of the wheel pressed against my numb palms. The broken bottle lay on the seat beside my thigh. He had left me here, fatally injured, framed for everything. No one would ever find me in this mangled wreck, hidden deep in the wilderness. No one would learn what Brian had done. A shallow breath caught in my throat, a fading sound. The last light in the world flickered, then went out. Only the dark remained.